Welcome to A Photographer's Life, the channel that takes you behind the curtain and into the world of professional architectural photography. Join us now for a discussion with members of the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers, America's premier architectural photography organization.
So welcome everyone to our February meeting for the AIAP. We're going to talk about websites and some design options and how we use them for marketing and things like that. And this is a subject that we've kind of put off for a while. There's the outline that I've got in there for today's podcast, and there's some helpful information. We're not going to probably follow that point for point, but I did take some time to put this together in cooperation with some resources that were recommended to me as far as some website resources that would be helpful for photographers. So if you want to download that PDF that's in the chat window, that might be useful to you to refer back to as far as, you know, what's important is for a website and for SEO. And, you know, I'm not one for acronyms, so that's search engine optimization for those who don't like acronyms. This information came to me full of acronyms, and so I tried to get rid of as many as possible. But one of the things that occurred to me is that there's a lot of businesses where what they're selling, we're in a business that's a visual business, so we really need to show something. And so, you know, our website is where we kind of show off what we do. So that's where we attract clients, and you know, the more attractive our website is, the better off we are. So you know, just kind of to start out with here, I'm just kind of would like to get some feedback and some discussion on your ideas and thoughts about what your website does for you and how important it is, and the role it plays in your own personal business.
Yeah, our website is our main piece of marketing. My business partner, Mary Beth, handles all of it. I don't have anything to do with it. And we try and do several blog posts a week, and blogging really works with helping our analytics. You know, we brings us up in the Google Analytics, so that's been very helpful. We have a lot of people that read our blog, and that's been helpful as well. But that's our main source of marketing is our website, and it's you know, I know other people do social media and other things, but we get most of our new business through our website.
That for me has been the case as well. The people that actually hire me, not just like me, the people that actually hire me, it's those that come to my website, and those that will fill out a form to ask for a quotation, and I do have a form on there. But you mentioned something there about search engines and search engine ranking and things like that, and analytics. And one of the things that I think a lot of photographers overlook is the importance of Google's analytics program. And we get to that just a little ways. You know, I've kind of got it buried down here in the outline just a little bit. I think it's under point number 5 and 6 about Google Analytics tracking. So when you set up a Google business profile, and hopefully everybody's done that, and then you submit your you set up a Google Search Console with your website, so that Google finds your website and knows it's there, and can track it. And they will send you a piece of code that you then have to embed in your website so that they verify that it's you and it's your website. And you have to take that piece of code and put it in the head of your website. And for those of you who don't know code, or those of you who listen to this later, you know, the code of the underlying code of your website is divided into, you know, head and body and footer of your website. And that unique code that Google sends you has to be sitting in your website in the proper place for them to find you and know that it's you, and then for them to index your website. And that's super important for you to get ranked on Google and to come up in search engine rankings with them, which you don't have to pay for. And you don't have to pay for that click-through traffic on Google. And if you've got a Google business profile already, then they will index all those pages. And if your pages are properly put together as far as your website, if you've used a website design tool that puts your pages together properly, then they will index all of those pages properly, and that will come up. You've probably seen websites, hopefully your own, where it has your website name, and then it has all your pages listed, slightly indented below that as to what those pages are. Your about page, your portfolio, your contact page, all those things. And so you don't have to pay for any of that. Google does that automatically once you get that code in there and let them find all those pages for you. But you have to do it the right way. And so I've mentioned that on points 5 and 6 in this outline, about using the Google Search Console and setting up a Google business profile and getting all that in place so that you can have them do that for you all for free and not have to pay anybody to do that, and get those results. Any success stories out there that any of you wants to share about how that's worked for any of you?
I wanted to point out one thing, that all of my work eventually relies on my website, because, like, for instance, I just went to the International Builder Show last week. Got a lot of good, networking done. Met a lot of clients who said they'd like to use my work and all that. And they're never going to be interested in me until they look at my website to see if they like my work. And then if they like my work, everything's worthwhile doing. And if they don't like my work, that's the end of that, and that's fine. And all that I wanted to point out was that with all that stuff with Google search and SEO and everything else, that's extremely important if you're trying to be found by people who knows where in the world, and they're looking for someone that can do their work. But when it comes to, that repeat referral thing where they're just checking out my website because they've been given my website, then that part doesn't matter. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that part, it doesn't matter. But I do a lot of work to make sure all that is correct. Anyway, and I have a SEO consultant right now. I'm paying monthly for just 4 months to clean up everything.
Yeah, money well spent, just to tidy things up and make sure that things are all in place. For me, that's where all my serious business came from, was my website, and that's how people found me. One of the things that we talk about here in, I think it's under point number 4 in this PDF, is the basics that actually matter, and that's the keyword approach on your website. And some of this comes in your blogging, but also in the content that you actually have on your page, where you have keywords that draw people and that Google indexes. So, like, if it's, say for Norman here, architectural photographer in Chicago, he's probably got a lot of content on his website that talks about an architectural photographer in Chicago, and that pulls a lot of traffic towards him. And I'm the same way. As far as the cities that I work in, there's a lot of content on my website that's going to point to the cities that I work in and the type of work that I do. There's not any of the content on my website that's going to be, that's going to be somebody looking for a wedding photographer in Salt Lake City. None of that's going to point to me. So those keywords that you put in the content that's actually on your page is really important. Blogging is a place where that's really easy to work in those keywords that are really helpful. And you know, I have a page of articles that I've written, you know, talking about different things about how to buy photography, how to make the most of your budget, a checklist for architectural photography buyers, and those kinds of things. All useful resources for photography buyers, but they're also just chock full of keywords that are going to point somebody towards my website when they're looking for photography in the areas that I, you know, want to get traffic from.
Also, the consultants will show you that there's a lot of keywords out there that we wouldn't normally think of the way people look for us. One of the first things they just did for me was I showed them 10 websites I really liked and people that I would think would be like my competition or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And they checked out all you guys. And, and anyway, and then they come up with like 40 keyword phrases.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are, you know, like 750 people a month use this key phrase that I would never think of.
Mm-hmm.
And the key phrases that I like, 30 people a month look under, you know, for an architectural photographer with that key phrase. It's
Right.
just really weird, the key phrases that, you know, get people to your website.
Yeah. Um, and there's some free services online that will help to analyze keyword phrases. DIB is one, DIB, and you can pay for their service as well. But they will, you know, you can get their free service, and it will analyze. You can have them compare your website to other websites that you think you're competing with, and it will analyze your traffic compared to the other websites' traffic and the keywords that might be useful for you to be using that would help you compete better and the amount of traffic. And I did this early on and with a photographer I knew was paying for Google AdWords, where he was paying per click, you know, and I wasn't paying per click. And it didn't take very long where my traffic was equal or surpassing his, and I wasn't paying anything for it. So those services are out there and they're free, and you can use those to really refine your website and really get a lot of mileage just with a few little tweaks on your website, which are really important. I wanted to jump into just kind of the nuts and bolts of actually putting the website together, and there's hundreds of design sources out there, and I just kind of wanted to hear from you as to what sources you've used to actually create your website. You know, the companies. I know Squarespace is the big one, but is there anybody else that you've used that you'd recommend or that's been successful?
I can jump in on this really quick.
Yeah.
So if I can opt for our main portfolio, we actually use a PhotoFolio.
Okay.
So they're DesignX templates. I don't think they use the other ones anymore. And then for our archive site, we actually utilize Photo Shelter, and that's just
Yeah.
so we can have all of our imagery up somewhere. And a PhotoFolio is very good, but I have worked in Squarespace before, and you do get a bit more design flexibility, I would
Uh-huh.
say, with it. And then I do a lot of work in the background in how I keep everything organized, utilizing spreadsheets and Lightroom. So
Okay. All right. I would imagine that I probably get at least once a week, if maybe once every 2 weeks, I get pitched from somebody that wants to create a new website for me. and you probably do the same. And they've got, you know, and usually it's some offshore company that create a new portfolio website for me, um, and that's great. But there's really only just kind of this core group of website design companies that are easy to use, and Squarespace is one of them. I use one called MobiRise, and that's a really easy drag and drop kind of thing for me, and it uses modules a lot like Squarespace does. Um, I remember the old days of Dreamweaver, and
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I remember that.
some of you, have lost sleep and torn your hair out over Dreamweaver. I'm glad those days are gone.
Dreamweaver. I haven't heard that in years.
Adobe still supports that for some reason. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure
I
why.
have a G4 that has Dreamweaver on it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a painful one. But now it's so easy just to drop things in and have those modules work, and the code is set up properly, and you've got the style sheets that all work, and Google recognizes and can read them, and
I think the key is that you have a software that you can go in and make quick changes yourself, that you certainly don't have to pay some
yeah,
web designer to make changes. Because
yeah,
I'll come back from a Photoshop or shoot, and I got two or three pictures that are better than some that are already on my website. I
hmm
go in and change them out, and I can do it as fast as I can pay a check online.
yeah. Well, and every once in a while, you just want to tweak something, maybe like on your
Yeah.
bio or you know, your fact page, or maybe your contact information you just want to change, or and you want to, you need to update your copyright date or whatever. And it's nice not to have to call somebody to do that. You just jump in and take care of that. Um, and then as far as hosting, it's nice to have a reliable host um, that you can call if you need to make a change as far as your domain. And that's one thing I don't have on here, is talking about website domains. Is there anybody that has more than one domain name that they use,
I,
that they
I,
host under?
I think I've got with the different hosts. I don't know. Mary Beth would have to answer that. We got a couple of different domain names,
Yeah,
and
different
but they
URLs is what I guess I
yeah
mean.
yeah and I mean we got Portrait Pro website because we do um portraits, but I've got another one that the old name we used to have for our business 30 years ago. We still have that domain, and it points to our
Right.
current website.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I started out, I mean, my main website now is just my name, alanblakely.com, but I started out as blakelyphotography.com. And so that URL, I mean, that domain points to my website now, because there's probably people that are still going to type that in. And there's also people that are probably going to type in Alan Blakely Photography. So I have that domain as well, and that points. And so I've kind of tried to take, to secure those different possibilities, in case something then that's not exactly what my domain is, that it's going to point to me anyway.
yeah. I think it's funny here. The only name you can't misspell is Weston and Davis. Everybody else's name, there's a million ways to spell it. So uh, yeah, I should have, John Smith or something.
Yeah. Well, and there's some in our group who don't use their name
Yeah,
for their business, and so and that's a different situation entirely, where you have a business, a DBA that you use for your website. Um, and then I tied up a whole bunch early on, thinking that I'm going to need all these, and then realized I don't need all these, and so I've sold them off over the years. And I just sold one the other day, which cost me like I think I paid GoDaddy $9 for it, and I sold it for $1,500 a couple weeks ago. So it's nice to let some of those go occasionally. You don't need them all, but those domain names are important so that people can find you, because every once in a while you'll get somebody that'll hear your name secondhand in conversation about a photography referral, and they'll just go typing, and it's nice to be able to have them find you.
How do
Um,
you go about selling your domain name? And I ask that because there we I own at least one other domain name
yeah.
that I always thought might be valuable to, if no other reason, to redirect traffic to us. And
Uh-huh.
I've not given it up, but we really don't do anything with it. And have kind of, probably selling it's not a bad idea, but I just don't even know how to go about that process.
I use a service called Afternic, AFTERNIC, and they take a commission, but that's where the domain names that I have, that I don't use anymore, um, and thought I needed really bad. I have with Afternic, and sometimes they'll sit there for a while. You just put a number on them, and what you'd like to get, and then it's kind of like eBay, and what the lowest number is you'll take, and then eventually they sell, and then you get a check, and that's nice.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that because, like I said, I've got a domain name that I've had for 15 years that I think it's architecturalphotography.biz, but and always thought it could be valuable.
That one, I'm sure you would be able to sell that one quite easily. I've sold one very similar to that recently.
And it just sort of like, if I'm going to utilize it, great.
Yeah,
But if I'm not going to utilize it, why just continue to pay the hosting fee year after year after year
yeah,
to have a domain name that I don't intend to utilize? Unless anybody has any, wonderful stories of how to leverage that. It's sort of like I'm sure there's ways to leverage it. I just am not
So,
savvy
Brad,
enough or want to dedicate the time to doing it.
Brad, is it live?
Uh,
If it's live, just point your website to it. So if someone types
yeah, and I think it
architectural
is
photography,
live. I just don't, it's just kind of there.
yeah, I mean, just redirect your website to it. So if someone uses that phrase, architectural photography, um, and if you work on the analytics of that specific site, it'll just redirect to your site. I
yeah.
would
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to hurt you.
No,
Certainly.
No,
it is useful. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
but you may find it's more useful to have the money in your pocket too.
I, right now, yeah, I'd rather have the money in my pocket.
Yeah, I mean, the last one I sold was, and I'd had it for a number of years, was Utah Real Estate Photo, and I'm not ever going to need that, so I was happy to let that one go, and that one sold at a really good price. So yeah, and after Nick made that really simple, I just had a direct deposit, and they took care of the whole thing.
Alan, do you mind if I ask just a general question?
Yeah.
And I'm interested in what people's approach to their website is, kind of philosophically. Um, I know how I've approached our website, um, and we all work in our little egocentric stratospheres, and we all think like, oh yeah, well, I'm doing what is best to be done. But it's such when you talk about websites as a tool. I mean, I think websites are an incredible marketing tool, but like I really don't think that my website in and of itself generates business. Like I don't think that there are people who go to my website, see the work, like the work, and then call me up and say, "Oh, I've seen your website and I want to work with you." I think it is much more like I've had several conference calls recently where I'm essentially hand holding a client, walking them through my website and showing them what's there. Now, and I'll just really quickly talk about the philosophy of our website, which we're about to update. But, I feel like anybody can, not anybody, but let's just say anybody can have a website full of beautiful images, especially if you've had a career of decades, that hopefully over your decades, you've created some beautiful images that you can all put on a website. So to go to a website and there be beautiful images there is one thing. So what we've sort of tried to do is break down our website into different, higher ed, and ours even goes deeper into like higher ed academic buildings, higher ed housing, theaters, sports, so that you've got all these different market niches. So if somebody wants to see, hey, what have you done in this market niche, they can see under health and wellness that, I've shot umpteen hospitals, so it's not going to be my first rodeo. And then we put our featured projects, which I want to be able to show depth that when we go to a project, we don't walk away with one good image, we walk away with 25 good images. So the philosophy there is show your experience in one area and then show, really what you can do with a project in another area. That all being said, like when I had a conference call the other day and I was talking to somebody about uh, a middle school, I could take them to the K-12 area of our website and talk about here's what I've done in other schools. But it just, but just because like me and my little egocentric sphere think that's a wise approach doesn't really mean that it is.
That's the hard one, and I'll tell you what I found out from at least from analytics on mine, and there's I find there's two audiences that come to my website, um, and my analytics look like an inverse bell curve. So I've got one group that comes and they hit my landing page, and all they really want to do is either fill out my request form or find my email address and my phone number, or they want to jump into my portfolio and spend an hour there. There doesn't seem to be anybody in between. And so I feel like I kind of have to serve those two markets. There's people that, yeah, I just want to call him and get it over with. And then there's people like, I really need to vet this guy, and I really need to see the depth and scope of all the work and everything like that. So I've got the analytics are just really kind of goofy when I look at them, as far as time on page and, you know, what pages people look at and the time on the pages and visitors to different pages. It's they either come and they find what they need and they're gone, or they come and they don't leave for an hour. So I think there's two answers there, and I think both are well served by the way you're approaching it, because I think there's a lot to be gained by having all that depth on your website, that you can walk people through all that.
Brad, to your point about the website, I know this because I just have been working with a designer to update my website. Much needed. I enjoyed this photo shelter template site that I had because, like Glenn was saying, I was able to interchange pictures really easily. But I'm switching to Squarespace next month, and it's interesting when you like. Brad, you have so many photos, it's almost like you want to inspire people, like you want to like kind of like, make them feel welcome to view the site, not be intimidated because, I'll take any call really, but I don't want to just hammer them with like too stunning of images or anything like that, where they're like, oh, this guy's out of our league, but it's hard to know when to like, not it's hard to know when to stop showing people pictures, right? Like you kind of want them to be inspired and leave some to their imagination. Like, oh, this guy looks like he's trustworthy. He's technically proficient. Let's throw him in the mix. So I feel for you about that. It's weird because you have this access. We have the ability to have our entire libraries available if wanted, but that's really not what you want the website to do, I think, And the funny thing also is anytime I tell someone I'm a photographer, the first thing they do is pull their phone out and look at me on Instagram, which I'm not the best at keeping up to date on, but like it just goes to show you, yes, you have to be present with a website. Of course, you can't not have a website, but I do think that social media is so important these days. And I just wanted to throw that into the mix with you guys.
I want to add to that. Just uh, I'm looking at let's see, Brad. I'm looking at your website while we're talking. It's wonderful. You got a lot of great work and you show a lot of categories. And then in each category, you have a good amount of pictures so that you can tell that you can really do corporate, you can do residential, single family, so forth and so on. And I feel strongly, I have far more pictures than most people have on their website. But I think if you want a retail photographer, I want you to see that I have at least 30 really good images of retail. And I don't care if you look at the rest of the site at all, but I don't want you to come and find 200 images on my website and there's 5 of them that are retail because I need to cover 28 other categories. So I like to have at least 15 pictures of each category that I want to photograph. And I see that, Brad, you have that very nicely, and I like to do that too. Just
Yeah,
saying.
I think sometimes less is more.
Yeah, I agree.
If you have a portfolio and you've got, whatever your category is, and you've got hundreds of pictures there, nobody wants to look at that. They want to know if you can shoot. Can you shoot with a window in a room? Can you shoot with a light fixture turned on? What's your composition skills like? We have a section on our website, how to hire an architectural photographer and what to look for. I direct people to that all the time. Whether they use us or not, they're going to find somebody, if they read that, they're going to be educated in what to look for. Because I always feel that, they should hire a photographer based on his style. And if it fits their particular market, that's who they should use. But yeah, sometimes less is more. You don't need to overwhelm people with showing that, hey, I can shoot 100 images.
Yeah, I was involved in a roundtable discussion a couple of years ago, and I was the only photographer, and the rest of the people were photography buyers, um, architects, interior designers, and so forth. And basically the message was, show me 20 to 25 great images, and let me make a decision from there. I don't need to see 200 images. And so I concur with Norman that, some great images, 20 to 25 images really should tell the story about what your abilities are. And it's great if you want to really, jump into those categories. And I personally have a tab on my website, which is project galleries, and you can go in there and see hundreds of images if you want to, by individual projects. And I have those hosted by Pixieset. And so you can go in and you can search on different categories or project names or things like that, and see, if you want to go through an entire photo shoot of mine, you can do that. But I that's not my portfolio tab. So that was the takeaway for me from people that actually were buying high-end photography, and these were not small market, contractors and builders and things like that. These were national photography buyers, and that was their message was 20 to 25 images was really all we need to tell whether or not you're a capable photographer, and that we should hire you for our high-end project. So anyway, take it for what you will.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Alan, I've noticed on your site, like you've listed um, like almost every state as places you'll consider for photos. And I was just curious, has that been helpful in finding work across the US?
It has, and up until this past year, I spent 10 months out of the year traveling. So it used to say that I had assignments in certain areas, which was most of those areas that you see there. Now it says I will consider.
Yeah.
I will consider assignments in those areas, and that's the operative word. So far this year, I haven't considered any of those.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a big help. When we don't have anything scheduled out of state, we need to update. We do the same thing. I don't. We actually list the states where we'll have projects in, but letting the clients know that you travel, at least for my business, has been really beneficial
That's
because
huge.
we do spend a lot of months traveling out of state. We prefer to work in Illinois or Wisconsin, Michigan, but man, we do a lot of work in Boston, New York, and Houston, and Texas, and traveling has been really good for us.
And that's one thing I've got here that I can't remember what pointer I've got it listed under on the PDF, but I think it's important to maybe kind of explain, the scope of where you do business. Not only the fact of what you shoot, but maybe where you shoot as well. That's important. I found that as soon as I put that on there, and I've had that kind of information on there for several years now, probably the last 10 years. As soon as I put that on there, my work nationwide increased dramatically, and I didn't have to go looking for it. It just came. People called me. I live in Utah, but my work is coast to coast, and all of a sudden it was I didn't have to go looking for it. Just because I said I worked in those markets. So it's easy for people to hire you in markets that you just let them know you're available in.
Do you guys view your website as kind of a vetting tool at all? Do you try to use your website to prevent people from calling you sometimes? Maybe people that are not maybe are looking for a real estate photographer. How do you, like, I've gone back and forth on should I include a rough pricing structure, not like my exact prices, but you can expect to spend a range of X for X number of photos. I've taken that off and put it back on, and taken it off and put it back on. What do you guys think about what question? I guess here's the question. What question should your website answer before they call you?
I had a client call last year, this sweet lady, and she said, Norman, I've been looking at your website for years, and now I can finally afford to hire you. I got a huge budget. And I said, what do you need? I got a home in Chicago, and I just can't wait to have you out. And I said, well, what's your budget? She goes, I got $250. I said, $250? And she said, $250. Yeah, $250. And we laughed and we talked for a long time, and I explained to her that I won't even buy you a picture. Um, but I was able to direct her to somebody that she could work with. She needed a real estate photographer. But I think that when someone comes to your website, there should be a, a preconceived notion that, yeah, your work is high quality and it's not cheap, because we aren't. But what they're getting is quality work and perfection and images that will benefit them for their marketing. And that's something, you know, I don't do real estate photography, and I don't want to talk to people that want real estate photography. If they call me, I'll give them a real estate photographer, a good one. But that's not what we want. That's in my business. We want to work with high-end clients that want perfection.
I
So
think Kevin asked a important question though, because
your price,
I get
yeah.
asked that all the time from other photographers about putting pricing on your website.
Before I launched my photography business, I was an account manager for a web company, web development company. And I feel like the businesses that did this best, they would have like in the contact form, they would have some kind of a qualifier which would say, tell me your budget. And then they start with the lowest number that they are even considering.
Oh,
And that way, as you're filling it out, you're like, oh, like the beginning spot is here. And it's so, I mean, if you want to do that, then it also doesn't tip your hand of all your pricing, but it also gives you, I choose not to do that because I kind of, I would rather talk to someone. And
yeah.
my first conversation with them, I like to explain how my process is and why I charge what I charge. But I mean, if you're getting inundated with people and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have people ask me for $250 jobs every day, that it can be helpful. So, I mean, it would be it's kind of it's a first filter you can add. The places I've seen that do it best are kind of vague. It'll be like starting at X dollars, and then they'll give price ranges, like make 3 or 4 price
Mm,
ranges, and the top one's like custom, and it's like unlimited, like which no one would ever click on, but it can set the tone of
that's interesting.
that your
Well,
quality. So
uh, here's how I don't put my pricing on my website. But I do have a template for a response when people ask what my pricing is. And typically, excuse me, the only people that ask for pricing, in my case, at least as far as architecture goes, are real clients, people who are experienced, they're architecture firms. Most often, they're the marketing people at architecture firms. So I have a template that doesn't just answer the question of what I charge, and I'm happy to explain how it works, but it also strengthens that, for instance, I don't put a time limit on the images. Um, I mentioned multi-party contracts. Um, I mentioned video, which they haven't asked about. And what do I charge for video clips or finished pieces? All these kinds of things. So I have this template, which doesn't live on the website, but it's very easy, and I can very quickly answer those kinds of questions. Um,
We have to remember that Barry is so expensive. You don't
that's why I'm not
you
working,
don't ask how
Norman.
much you don't ask how much it is. He doesn't ask how much you're paying him. He just weighs how much you're paying him.
This is
So
why I haven't had a job in 5 years. But you know, you got
Barry,
to stand
Barry,
by.
Barry is so expensive.
No,
It's
I mean, you know, one of the things that I'm able to do, so what I do is I say there's sort of a range, and it really depends on who the client is, right? If it's a big international firm, I know what kind of they're comfortable paying, right?
it gets a bigger scale.
It's a bigger scale. If it's a landscape architecture firm, unless they're really a large landscape architecture firm, I know they don't have much money in their budgets, that much money. But I also know it takes less work to do to produce what they need, because you know you're not lighting, may not even be able to blend photos.
Yeah.
So you know, I'll say something along the lines of my prices range from $1,750 to $2,500 a day. You get 10 to 15 photos. I will show you more than I'm contracted for, and you can pick the ones you like best. That's not an upsell. What it is it's a way to explain to them I'm a reasonable guy, and that, and I know myself too, which is I do shoot a lot, so I always shoot more than I'm contracted for. There's a comfort level for the client to know that they're going to have some input, and I almost never get pushback on how the photos look because they picked the ones they wanted. So all of that is kind of embedded in the answer, and that's how I manage those kinds of pricing questions. And I usually get thanked, which is amazing.
Yeah.
They don't always hire me, but they thank me for the amount and the quality of the information.
That makes sense.
Where I really struggle with it is I think having pricing on our website kind of leads us toward a commodity model.
Yeah.
Where we're competing on price, and I never want to compete on price. And I think you can offer fair value at a very high cost or a very, very low cost, depending on what you're providing in that range. So what I've defaulted to now is I've still got it page on my website, but it's hidden, and I can send a link on inquiry to somebody once I've qualified them with a conversation, and then it breaks down why I charge what I charge and exactly what I charge.
Yeah. What I found, Kevin, is most all of us are pretty much in the same ballpark with our pricing. And I've always thought, if someone's looking for photographers, and I'll, to me, there's plenty of work for everybody. If someone has if someone's asking for something, Norman, I like, I'd like this to be like, some people actually like overexposed shots. I won't do that, but I know a photographer that does, so I'll pass them on to somebody else. They call those airy shots. I don't do stuff like that, but whatever, I think we're all in the same ballpark. So I think that if someone is going to, pull up an architecture photographer, they go to the AIP, for instance, and they're selecting photographers. I'm always hoping that they select one that, that's what they're looking for. That's the style or photography they're looking for. And hopefully it's not based so much on price, because I agree with you. It becomes a commodity thing, and I don't want to do that. I don't think anybody does, because if you have a client that's hiring you strictly on price, that's probably not your best client.
Just kind of as an aside on that, Norman, I've got some interesting statistics as far as the AIAP directory goes. People sit on those directory pages for a long time. They're clicking through and looking at pretty much everybody on the page when they come, when they look at a geographic area, which I found really fascinating. I was questioning it, and so I went back and asked Neon to verify those statistics, and took a second look at those. And invariably, when somebody clicks on a geographic area, they look at pretty much everybody on the page, which I found kind of fascinating. So they're comparing, everybody on there before they make a decision, which I find that really encouraging that
Yeah, that's a good tool. Yeah.
that people are taking the time to really compare people once they land there. And I push a lot of people there. When I turn away a job, rather than just refer it to an individual photographer, I always refer people back to that directory and say, go take a look here and find somebody here that fits your needs. And so,
My biggest question about Google Analytics is both with the AIP and with our own websites. So how much of does Google Analytics break it down by architects and architectural photographers, and how many people who are going to our sites are just fellow architectural photographers checking And how
That,
many
that are
of them
people,
are actually architects looking for photographers?
you need to factor in all the people stealing from you too, Brad.
Well, yeah, we're
That's a
working
really
on
good question. Yeah.
that.
I think there's a lot of other photographers looking at photographers. I know for me personally, that's the case. I I know from LinkedIn, when I look at who's viewing your profile, one of the bigger categories is photographers.
Yeah, it's true.
So I suspect that's the case. I can't break that down and quantify that as far as the analytics with Google, but I suspect that's kind of the case as well. But yeah, that brings up an interesting thing as far as keywording. Um, uh, a lot of us are using architectural photographer. Um, one thing I found is that one of the more common search terms is architecture photographer that people are searching on. So if you don't have that term in there, I mean that is going to you're going to miss out on some traffic because that's a different spelling, and having architectural photographer in your website is the only terminology. Is you're going to miss out on a bunch of traffic for those for searching for architecture photographer. So like architecture photographer in Chicago is a different search than architectural photographer Chicago, and so you kind of need to have both, and so you need to work those in those both of those in there somehow.
Architect photographer is a big one too, Alan.
Architect photographer, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
those are things that were suggested to me by this DIB website that came up with. These are search terms you should be considering, kind of thing, and which I did. But another thing that uh, the alt tags on your images, we haven't mentioned that. This is kind of a little fiddly thing that not a lot of us do on when we are putting together a website, and sometimes the website design tool we're using, whether it's Squarespace or whatever else, will prompt us to put an alt tag in there. Basically, it's just a naming device to tell the search engine what that image is, to give it a title or a description. And if we don't do that, we miss out on some indexing that is really helpful. And that's one of the things that I had to clean up on my website was all those alt tags that were missing. And so, somebody searching for, photographs of, a certain area or a certain project or things like that. If you've got those alt tags in there, that points them to your website as well. And you can also put your name in there. You can put anything in that alt tag. Doesn't have to be just the description of the photograph or the name of the project. And so those things are really super important. If they're left empty, you're just missing out on indexing information that otherwise you could take advantage of.
Yeah, when you if you guys blog, adding those into your image descriptions are really important, especially if you travel. I could be blogging about a project I shot in Wisconsin, and I might put in the image description, what the place is, but then I'll add, Boston or New York or whatever other city, and that really helps when people are, from other locales are looking for photographers. So you're right, that's huge.
Norman, is your blog part of your website? Is that an
Yeah,
integral
so
part?
I'm glad you asked. I do it two ways. I have a Squarespace blog and I have a duplicate Blogspot blog because Google owns Blogger, and I get and so when I put a blog up on Squarespace, I take that exact same thing and I put it over on Blogspot and on Blogger, and that gives me an incredible, and I have a link in there that goes from Blogger to my website if you just get the Google blog. But I look at the traffic on both, and just this last year, there's millions of people, 320 million people in the country, but sometimes we'll have six figures of traffic through our blog. So it's really it's been really helpful for us. It raises our Google Analytics. So I know that if I'm posting regularly, and I do that, I mean, we've got, we've been in business for 30 years, so I've got all these projects I can just talk about and load up. And it's if I do that two or three times a week, our rankings are always high, and our web traffic is always strong. So I think that's important. It's really important. And LinkedIn is about the only social media thing I do, and that's beneficial. I'm not saying you don't get traffic and lights and all that other stuff, but for people directing or looking for business, LinkedIn has been the only thing that's been beneficial to me. I'll do a couple LinkedIn posts, and I'll almost always get some type of traffic from that to our through our website, or someone messaging me about a project. It's really beneficial.
Norman, do you pay for the boost on LinkedIn?
No, I've never used it. No, I post in groups, specific groups that like I'll work with an interior design group, or I'll work with an architecture group or a hospitality group. And if I'm posting about a hotel, I'll put that in hospitality. So, you know, and I also do, I still like shooting film. I also participate in those groups. Not that I've ever been hired to shoot film anymore, but I still like it. And I like keeping it up because I like maintaining that skill. But LinkedIn has been the only place that I've that's worked for us. I mean, other people I know, they get business through Facebook, and Instagram and whatever else is out there. I don't mess with any of it. But
Yeah, I think for our market niche, where we're not retail necessarily, that those like Facebook and Instagram, probably we don't get a lot of traction from those.
yeah,
LinkedIn is really the one that is probably the most beneficial to us. I wanted to, before we get too close to the end of this, I wanted to talk about page loading and website loading and speed and mobile friendliness. And the reason is because I don't know if you're aware, but most people are going to look at your website on their phone. I
Yep.
mean, unless they're sitting in an office, you really got to be aware of how your website looks on somebody's phone. And for me personally, I didn't design my website on a phone. And so you really have to be careful about what your website looks like on a phone, because that's where, a lot of people are going to see you for the first time on their phone. And if your website doesn't load well and doesn't look good on a phone, they're going to be gone. And another thing is the image size. If your image is, if they're huge images and they don't load fast, they're also going to be gone. And if they're not optimized size-wise to load fast, then you're in
What's
trouble.
your sense of what an optimized size is of
Well,
your
that
photo?
depends on, I think that depends on your website service that you're using. I think if you get beyond 2,000 pixels wide, you're probably in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. 1,200 is a nice place to be.
Yeah. So I think 1280 is what most people recommend. Certainly on a phone, that's plenty big. If somebody's looking at you on a 30-inch monitor in their office, then that's a different story. Then maybe 3,000 pixels is more appropriate, but that's not going to happen very often.
Well, it's also how you've processed it.
Well, yeah, sure.
A JPEG properly processed at 50% quality looks great.
Yeah.
That's actually yeah. So you don't need to get any much higher than 50, maybe 60% at most.
Right.
And that difference in size, so to speak, is huge. How quickly things load. It's also the website provider. I'm on
Right.
PhotoFolio, and they just changed their server, And the difference is kind of remarkable how
Mm.
quickly things load. And they didn't load slowly before, but they're really fast now. And people like that. And professional photo buyers
Hmm.
uh, who are used to looking at a lot of photos very quickly, anybody that's been through a portfolio review knows how horrifying it is to sit there while the reviewer is doing this. These photos you've worked maybe an hour, 2 hours or more on, but they are used to looking at. They know what quality is when they see it, and it's a different mindset than it is for us, and it is for actually some other kinds of professionals who might look at your work. So, yeah, it has to load fast and move right along.
Yeah, and a lot of these these website design tools, you can toggle between a desktop view and a mobile view, so you can see what your website looks like, on a mobile system, as opposed to the desktop view, and that's really helpful.
I just looked at my analytics on my website, Alan. I've had 762 visitors this month, and 532 were from a desktop, and the rest are from a mobile device.
Okay.
And that's usually, because I look at that, usually that's unusual. It's usually the opposite way,
Oh, okay.
where most of it is mobile, but
Maybe that's because they're trapped at home because
people
of
are
the
sitting down.
snow.
Yeah, it's been cold. Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I
Yeah.
really do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it a lot of times if it's a marketing director, sitting in an office, they're certainly going to be looking at you on
Yeah.
their desktop.
Yeah.
So
I wish my analytics told me that. Oh, this marketing director is looking at you. Here's his phone
and who
number.
they were and their phone number.
Oh
Oh,
my
we could come
God.
up with that. Yeah.
And their favorite color.
That's LinkedIn.
Oh,
Uh,
that would be funny.
well,
Oh,
I think this has been helpful. There's just a lot of little details to think about and getting things buttoned up. The one thing that I'd probably like to end with is it's really useful to maybe put a second set of eyes on your website, somebody that you trust, um, and say, take a look at this and be brutally honest, and then probably take some advice about what you could do to make your website better and more friendly and probably more saleable. Um, you may find some things that a second set of eyes would see that you probably have never seen. I know I do that all the time when I write something. I will have somebody else take a look at that.
yeah, I know. I just sent something on the chat here and I misspelled a word. Mary Beth would never like, oh, Mary Price does out website instead of our website. So if Mary was looking at that, she'd have caught that right away, but that's really good. What else is nice, Alan, is looking at each other's websites. I um there's several in the AIAP here, photographers I really admire, and I'm always looking at their websites. Like Brad, if you see a lot of hits from Chicago, it's me. Alan, same thing. But I check a lot of people who, because honestly, among photographers, this is something that a lot of us, we don't realize this. Man, that's your storefront. I think you used that term before when we
Yeah,
were.
yeah,
That's your storefront.
yeah.
And we're so busy working about our craft that we let that side of things go.
Hmm.
And so when you find, a photographer who's really got a slick site and they've got it polished well, you can really glean a lot from that. You can learn from that, and we should learn from each other. So I'm always looking at other people's websites, and if I got a question, I'll call you and ask. I've done that with Brad. I've called him, hey, how's this working? How's that doing? I've done that with you.
Hmm.
So that's what we're.
And I invite that.
That's why
I mean,
that's
quite
why we have
frankly,
telephones.
well, I mean, but I will say, and good share of us are old enough to think about these days, but you know, back in the day, you met with your fellow photographer at the lab, and you'd go
Yeah.
in there, and everybody'd be looking at their chromes on the light table, and
Yeah.
you'd be like, "Hey, look at what I just shot."
Yeah.
Now, there's a void
Yeah.
for us to connect. So there's things like this in order to connect. And my inherent belief is, you know, Norman's only going to take pictures like Norman, and Alan's going to take pictures like Alan, and I'm going to take pictures like me. And so sharing whatever I do, hopefully will make somebody else be helpful to somebody else, but
Hmm.
it's not going to, like, sharing that information is not going to make anybody take pictures like me. That being said, just in this conversation, Lauren can attest to this. There was a photographer down in Kentucky who we became aware of, and we went to his website, and a good portion of his work was he had gone all over Ohio and various places and absolutely positively copied my photograph. Like, copied my photograph. I like went to his website. I'm like, thought I was looking at my own website because they were that close a copy, and had to send a very nice email saying, I'm very flattered by this, but go take your own photograph. We did this compare. We had the pictures, my original next to his, and I mean, it was the type of thing where he had obviously, like, did everything to
Probably
replicate it.
still had the holes from your tripod in
It's
the ground
yeah.
there still. So
Yeah. Brad, we had a commercial client that we recently fired that we've been working with for years. And they've done that. They were so upset that we fired them. They got a real estate photographer emulating every single picture, and we're talking thousands of pictures. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, I wouldn't have shot that. I would have taken this out. I wouldn't have, that there's distortion. Every single picture, I'm thinking to myself, man, you didn't have to go through that. You've got a license. But they really wanted to hit home that they were mad at Norman. But that's fine. I found it quite amusing. But what a project that is.
I had one thing that I wanted to share regarding websites that I discovered or learned this year that was new to me. I did I've been using AI as a somewhat an intern, somewhat of a business consultant that I don't fully trust. Um, and I did a query, and I asked three different AI programs to review my entire website and tell me like strategies to improve it. And I was really impressed. One, because I did three of them side by side,
hmm.
and they were all saying a lot of the same things, which made me think, oh, I probably need to pay attention to some of these things. And it was I felt like it was good and good feedback. And it was like another set of eyes, but it was like set of eyes that is informed from, so like I use Gemini, so it's
Hmm.
based from Google, so it knows what Google's looking for. I use Claude, which it seems to be more intelligent than some, and I use ChatGPT, which I've been using for a while, so it knows my voice.
And I will say, I feel blessed that I have Lauren, because, like, Lauren, unfortunately, I'm like, give me your feedback. What do you think is terrible? And I think we all have. I mean, I will say, I certainly feel that I have this issue that, I shoot a project, and there's images that I gravitate towards that I like, but whether those are the best images, sometimes it's better to sort of say, what does somebody else see that's good, then, because you sort of get into. I mean, I will tell you, there's somebody's doing an article, and they asked me for 5 images, and I said, Lauren, okay, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. What are the 5 images? How do you pick 5 images? What are the 5 images?
Mm.
And it's sort of like, it's all just a conundrum, you know. It's
It, I like that, Brad. You've got somebody that you got your right arm there, and you probably don't agree all the time. Like Mary Beth and I worked together for 34 years, and we're always at the opposite ends. But um, I think it's wonderful to have a second opinion, a second set of eyes, and a right arm, like, because it's just too beneficial. I know Alan and his wife probably defers to his wife more than anything else because she's,
Absolutely.
well, that's what I was going to say. Lauren and I don't always agree, but Lauren is
yeah,
always
me
right.
and Mary don't always agree either.
Yeah,
But Lauren's always right.
That's
So,
that's like me and my wife. She's always right, so I defer to her. So, yeah, especially with things that I write. If I have her read something through,
Yeah.
I will defer to her as far as how it gets edited.
Yeah.
In
Absolutely.
the first meeting that I attended about a year ago, you had suggested that we look at each other's websites to, team up with somebody and critique. So I can't remember the guy's name. He comes in and out of our thing here, but we looked at each other's website, and his is minimalist. Yeah, I mean, like, I bet he only has 60 images, maybe 50 images total that you can find, and I have way, way too many. But my point is that we still learn from each other. He still pointed out a couple things that he did like about my website that he might add to his. And I certainly found out some things about his that, I turned around and modified my website. So even if they're not like compatible or the same approach, you can still learn from anyone's website.
Absolutely.
Well, not anyone, but most people's websites.
Well, sometimes you can learn what not to do,
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, boy, this thing doesn't navigate worth a damn. So I'm not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we break here, I just wanted to just give you my take on something that based on what Matt said here. I've gotten a number of calls over the last couple of months from with a lot of angst from photographers about AI, and I just wanted to say that it feels just reminiscent of how things felt when personal computers came in the 80s, and it also feels really reminiscent of how it felt when digital photography came in the in the late 90s and early 2000s. And for me, it's just, get used to it, make the best of it. Because
I'm going to fight it the whole way, Alan, just like I did digital photography.
Yeah.
I was a holdout for years. I'm going to scan my images. That's why I got Mary Beth right.
There are those photographers that did that, I mean,
is there really a Mary Beth? We've never seen her.
Oh no, come here.
No, she was here trying to help us this morning.
Come here. This is Mary Beth.
What he doesn't know is I use AI. So I use it, you use it.
Say it isn't so. Oh my God, it's terrible.
I absolutely use AI myself, and I was just thinking back.
So does Norman. She corrects my language probably with AI. So bad.
It's something that I'm just it's just part of the transition we're going to go through now, and I think back to there were a lot of graphic designers I knew.
Film, Alan.
yeah, put that away. A lot of graphic designers I knew in the 80s that went out of business because they couldn't adapt to personal computers. They couldn't get on board with putting away their drafting board and their mechanical pencils and all that kind of stuff. And then I had some photographers that I competed against that I really respected, and they were super talented, but they just fought tooth and nail against digital photography.
That was me.
And don't do that. And so, I mean, there was one photographer who ran a lab, and I loved the guy, and he was about 20 years older than me. And I had a digital camera, and that time I think it was like 5 megapixels. I don't even remember that Fuji camera that came out. It was like 5 megapixels. Everybody thought it was such a big deal. Anyway, I did this promotional piece, and I had him printed at his lab to send out to my clients. And he came up to me and said, "What are you trying to prove with this?" And I said, well, I want to prove I can do high quality work with a digital camera. And he was just furious, and he ended up, his lab went out of business. He ended up selling his Refrema gear for his, these big Refrema processors for scrap metal. And I just felt really bad for the guy, but AI is kind of that new wrinkle that's coming along, and I think it's only going to make things better for us if we just choose to try to make it better for us. And so I hope that it's not the painful experience that some that are calling me are going through. So for me, it's really helped things out personally. Yeah.
I mean, if you do your own post, I do my own post. AI has been unbelievable. If I only do two things, one is spot removal with the healing brush.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. And of course, that's been AI all along. So that's old tool. But the other thing is making a selection in Photoshop and using generative AI to get rid of something and replace it with something else.
Sure.
There's nothing I've asked it to do that I couldn't do grinding away for an hour. But to have it work so well, although, as you know, you got to keep your eye on it because very weird artifacts will appear, little people on bicycles when you're removing them. And you go, what? We've all had that experience, but it's fantastic for all that sort of thing. But in the end, it's my taste, right? If I don't pay attention to the details, if I don't zoom into 100% at what it's done, then it's on me,
If I could jump in here, it really seems to me like we really have to really love it. I mean, we have to tell our clientele that we're with it because believe me, they are.
Mm-hmm.
From my point of view, the architects that I've been working with, they all are into it up to their armpits. And the more I can keep saying, "Oh yeah, I use it," especially if it's just for minor things like removing things out of a shot that are light switches and things like that. I still want to tell them, hey, at my age, I'm with it. I understand it. I endorse it. It's great.
Well, architects are using it, for rendering. They've been using it for 10 years, 15 years.
I mean, even just simple things like, plan out my shoot for the day, as far as angle of the sun on this particular building or buildings in this particular city or cities, all that stuff that I would grind away for a couple hours on could be done in just seconds with AI. So, easy stuff. And
also, along those lines, I had a job where I was under a lot of time pressure to shoot 5 buildings, and I ended up twice shooting into the sun. And I was able to wait until the sun dipped below these buildings. They were, 4 or 5-story buildings, but still it's ugly. It's nasty. You got this big white thing in the middle. Yeah. Well, sky removal. It's just a beautiful thing. You don't have to, or sky exchange. Well, I forget what it is.
Sky replacement.
Yeah. Thank you. Sky replacement. And, you have to not put something in there that's not going to work with the reflections on the rest of the building and whatever else is there. And you can certainly make it look, if it's a cloudless sky, make it look the same with roughly the same color cast. So that is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you contributing to this. Hopefully this was a useful podcast for everybody, and we covered a lot of material really fast, but I hope you'll go back to the PDF that I put in the chat window there and go over that information. There's a lot of technical stuff in there that we didn't dive into, stuff that we probably ought to revisit, and that I personally will be revisiting because this was put together from outside sources that know more about it than I do. So thanks to everyone. One kind of housekeeping kind of thing. Coming up, we'd like to feature some of you on the show and tell series that we did. We did 3 episodes of that a couple months ago. We'd like to do some more of those. Please contact me directly if you'd like to participate in that. Those are really easy. You just have to talk about one of your photo shoots that you'd like to share, how you went through that. Those are hugely popular, especially with people that are just coming into the industry. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that, especially from those that are just starting out in the industry, about how great that was to just hear how a professional approached that information. We're kind of at a situation right now, nationally and internationally, where there's not a lot of resources for people to learn architectural photography. And so I hope that you'll consider maybe participating in that. And then also topics for upcoming discussions, please shoot those my way if you have anything that you'd like to talk about. Today's discussion was a recommendation from one of our photographers, and we've got a few others in the queue that we're considering. So please let me know if there's anything you'd like to discuss going forward. Again, thanks to everybody, and we'll talk on the backside after I close the recording here. But I wish you all well and hope that you have a great day and things go well for your business going into spring. So thanks again and take care.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
This has been another episode of A Photographer's Life. If you've enjoyed this program, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. A Photographer's Life is brought to you by the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This episode is copyrighted and may not be used in full or in part without the written permission of the AIAP. Please join us again soon for another inside look at the world of professional architectural photography.